You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Compensating controls are safeguards that act as substitutes when a primary or preferred control cannot be implemented. They provide an alternate means of reducing risk to an acceptable level, even if they do not achieve the same standard of protection as the original measure. For example, if encryption cannot be deployed in a particular environment due to technical limitations, compensating measures may be used to reduce exposure. These alternatives recognize that in the real world, organizations often face constraints in budget, technology, or operations that make ideal controls impractical, at least temporarily. Compensating measures are needed because not all environments can support every recommended security control. Legacy systems may lack the processing power for modern encryption, remote sites may lack bandwidth for certain monitoring tools, or compliance requirements may exceed what an organization can immediately achieve. In such cases, compensating controls provide a pragmatic solution, allowing security programs to maintain coverage even when the preferred safeguards are unavailable. They prevent risk from being ignored, ensuring that organizations remain accountable and continue reducing vulnerabilities until stronger solutions can be deployed. Examples of compensating controls include network isolation used in place of encryption, or additional monitoring when full access controls cannot be enforced. For instance, if a database cannot support modern encryption, an organization might restrict its network segment, apply strict access policies, and increase logging to compensate. Another example could be restricting USB access on workstations when full data loss prevention software is unavailable. In each case, the compensating measure is not as robust as the original control, but provides enough mitigation to reduce risk meaningfully. It is important to understand that compensating controls reduce risk without eliminating it completely. Because they are substitutes, there is usually some residual risk that remains higher than with the intended control. Security professionals must weigh whether that residual risk is acceptable in the context of organizational goals and regulatory requirements. This makes risk assessment critical when choosing compensating measures. Organizations must evaluate both the effectiveness and the limitations of the substitute, and ensure that stakeholders are aware of what gaps remain. Transparency about these trade-offs is essential for responsible decision-making. Documentation of compensating measures is critical. Auditors and regulators require proof that risks are being addressed, even if not through the preferred control. Clear records describe why the primary control cannot be implemented, what alternative has been applied, and how it reduces risk. Documentation provides accountability and consistency, ensuring compensating controls are applied deliberately rather than ad hoc. It also helps future teams understand why certain decisions were made and whether the substitute remains necessary. Without documentation, compensating measures can become invisible, leaving organizations exposed during compliance reviews or audits. Regulatory frameworks often allow compensating controls, provided they are justified and documented. Standards such as PCI DSS explicitly recognize that organizations may not always be able to meet every requirement in the prescribed way, as long as compensating controls offer equivalent protection. However, acceptance depends on the context and on demonstrating that the alternate measures adequately reduce risk. This makes compensating controls not a loophole, but a structured alternative, used responsibly when primary controls cannot be implemented. Learners should recognize that regulators view them as practical but temporary solutions, not permanent replacements for required safeguards. The effectiveness of compensating controls depends heavily on context. A control that is effective in one environment may be insufficient in another, depending on the value of the assets and the severity of the threats. For instance, isolating a low-use internal system may be acceptable, but applying the same strategy to a customer-facing system would likely fall short. Effectiveness is always relative to the environment, the threat model, and the business needs. This is why risk assessment and continual evaluation are critical whenever compensating measures are used. They must be fit for purpose and tailored to the situation. Directive controls are a different type, designed to guide behavior rather than block or detect incidents directly. They provide instructions, reminders, or expectations that shape how people act. Directives set the stage for secure behavior by telling employees what to do or not do in specific contexts. Unlike preventative or detective measures, directives focus on influencing human conduct rather than system functions. They provide the rules and expectations that align individual actions with organizational security goals. Directives establish expected behavior by communicating security requirements clearly. They make employees and stakeholders aware of responsibilities, helping prevent negligence or misuse. A directive could specify that all visitors must wear identification badges or that staff must lock their screens when stepping away from their desks. These measures don't enforce security automatically, but they make expectations explicit. By telling people what is required, directives create a baseline of accountability and encourage consistent behavior across the organization. Examples of directive controls include signage that warns authorized personnel only, login banners that declare systems are monitored, and mandatory security training programs. Each of these does not directly prevent or detect a threat, but they influence human behavior by setting norms and expectations. Training, in particular, equips employees with the knowledge they need to follow secure practices, such as recognizing phishing emails or reporting suspicious activity. These controls are especially powerful when combined with technical and operational measures, as they ensure people understand and follow the processes that technology enforces. Directive controls differ from managerial controls in their scope and application. Managerial controls focus on governance, developing policies, conducting risk assessments, and setting high-level strategy. Directive controls, on the other hand, are about communication and influence at the user level. While a managerial control might define a password policy, a directive control is the sign reminding employees to use strong passwords or the training that teaches them why it matters. This distinction highlights how directives bridge the gap between governance and daily practice, translating abstract rules into concrete guidance for individual behavior. Ultimately, directive controls reinforce organizational culture by embedding security into everyday actions. They remind people that security is not only a technical responsibility, but also a shared human duty. Signs, training, and reminders help normalize secure practices, making them part of routine behavior rather than exceptions. A strong security culture depends on directive measures to keep expectations visible and consistent. Without them, policies risk being forgotten or ignored. For learners, the takeaway is that directives may seem simple, but they are powerful tools for shaping the habits and attitudes that sustain security across the organization. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Compensating controls are especially important in legacy system environments, where older hardware or software cannot support modern security measures. For example, a decades-old medical device might not be capable of encryption or patching without breaking functionality. In such cases, isolating the device on its own network segment, monitoring traffic closely, and restricting physical access serve as compensating measures. These substitutes acknowledge the limitations of legacy systems while still working to reduce overall risk. Learners should recognize that compensating controls often emerge in real-world environments where modernization is expensive, complex, or impossible. In many cases, compensating measures require layering multiple safeguards to achieve an acceptable level of protection. For instance, if full disk encryption cannot be implemented on a system, organizations might combine strict access restrictions, continuous monitoring, and frequent backups to cover the gap. No single measure alone matches the strength of the original control, but together they create a layered defense that reduces risk sufficiently. This demonstrates that compensating controls are rarely one-for-one replacements. Instead, they are strategic combinations tailored to the situation. Compensating controls must always be evaluated for adequacy, ensuring that they genuinely mitigate risk rather than simply offering the appearance of security. Regular testing, risk analysis, and audits verify whether substitutes hold up under scrutiny. For example, a compensating network isolation strategy must be tested to ensure no unintended connections remain. Evaluation prevents organizations from relying on weak or symbolic measures that fail under real attack conditions. Adequacy is not just about checking a compliance box, but about ensuring risk is truly reduced to an acceptable level. These measures are often meant to be temporary until preferred controls can be implemented. Organizations may use them while awaiting budget approval, system upgrades, or vendor patches. The danger arises when compensating controls become permanent by neglect rather than design. Learners should understand that while compensating measures are valuable, they should not replace efforts to implement stronger protections long-term. Treating them as stopgaps maintains pressure to pursue lasting solutions while still safeguarding systems in the interim. Compensating controls also play a vital role in audits. When auditors review compliance against frameworks like PCI-DSS or HIPAA, they allow compensating measures if they are properly documented and justified. Organizations must explain why the primary control could not be implemented and how the substitute achieves equivalent risk reduction. Without this transparency, compensating measures may be rejected, leading to compliance failures. Thus, proper use of compensating controls is not only a technical matter but also a governance responsibility, demonstrating both accountability and pragmatism. Directive measures extend into written procedures, which translate policies into actionable steps for employees. While a policy might state that sensitive data must be protected, a directive procedure specifies exactly how staff should handle, store, or transmit that data. These instructions provide clarity and consistency, ensuring that expectations are more than just broad principles. Well-written procedures reduce confusion, empower employees to act correctly, and align daily activity with organizational security goals. Learners should see directive procedures as the practical bridge between high-level governance and everyday tasks. Directive training further strengthens security by shaping how employees behave in real-world scenarios. Awareness programs that teach staff how to spot phishing emails, avoid tailgating, or handle sensitive documents build habits that reduce risk. Training turns abstract rules into lived practice, embedding security in daily routines. For example, while a login banner may remind users of monitoring, training ensures they understand why password complexity is critical and how to apply it. This form of directive control shapes culture, ensuring that security awareness is not just learned once but reinforced regularly. Directive measures also support compliance and accountability. Regulators often require not only that technical safeguards exist, but also that staff are trained and directed on proper practices. Training records, signage, and documented procedures demonstrate that organizations are actively guiding behavior, not leaving security to chance. This creates accountability. Employees cannot claim ignorance when expectations are made explicit through directives. In this way, directive controls strengthen compliance programs by showing that governance is reinforced by practical measures at the user level. However, directives have limitations if they are not paired with enforcement. A sign that says "authorized personnel only" means little if the door is unlocked, and training is ineffective if employees are never tested or reminded. Directive controls set expectations, but without technical or operational measures to enforce them, they risk becoming symbolic. This limitation highlights the importance of integration. Directives guide behavior, but enforcement ensures adherence. Learners should recognize that directives must exist within a system of layered controls to achieve their intended impact. Repetition and reinforcement are essential for directive controls to remain effective. One-time training sessions or rarely updated signs quickly fade from memory. Organizations must revisit directives regularly, refreshing awareness campaigns, updating reminders, and keeping messages visible. Repetition makes secure behavior habitual, reducing the risk of carelessness or complacency. Reinforcement also demonstrates that leadership prioritizes security consistently, not only after incidents occur. The culture created through ongoing directives ensures that secure actions become second nature rather than exceptional behavior. Compensating and directive controls both complement other types of security measures. Compensating controls address technical gaps, ensuring coverage when preferred safeguards are not available. Directive controls influence people, aligning behavior with security goals and supporting organizational culture. Together, they fill gaps in both systems and human actions, reinforcing the broader defense in-depth strategy. For learners, this demonstrates that security is not only about technology or processes alone, but about the interplay between substitutes, guidance, and primary controls. In conclusion, compensating and directive controls play vital roles in shaping comprehensive security programs. Compensating measures bridge gaps when ideal solutions are not possible, while directive measures guide people towards secure behavior. Both highlight the reality that security requires flexibility, adaptability, and clear communication. They are not standalone solutions, but when integrated with preventative, detective, and corrective measures, they help create resilient systems that protect organizations from diverse risks. By filling gaps and guiding human actions, these controls ensure that security strategies remain both practical and sustainable. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.